What's up? Welcome in to the latest episode of Pod Like a Champion, the blueandgold.com recruiting podcast. It's Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. Thanks to those of you guys who are watching us live on YouTube right now. And of course, we appreciate our YouTube audience watching us back and the folks listening on our podcast platform. I'm Patrick Engel, joined as always by our recruiting insider at Blue and Gold, Mike Singer. And Mike, since the last time we talked, Notre Dame's been pretty busy with some commits. Getting two receivers who I know we've talked a lot about and identified as must gets for him, and then adding yet another Rivals 254 star to the 2023 class. Busy times here.
I can't even remember the last time we did a Pod Like a Champion or a live show. I know we took last week off, so I'm guessing it's just been a couple weeks. But man, it is busy. I remember this time 2 years ago covering that 2020 recruiting class, being like, "What the heck am I supposed to write about?" There's Ramon Henderson and Colin Gamble. And there just was not a lot going on, but not the same now. It is, during a dead period like this we're in right now, still all sorts of news going on.
Why don't we start with the most recent commitment, and that's the 2023 class. Notre Dame adding Irvington, New Jersey four-star safety Adon Schuler to its 2023 class, number 3 commitment. In that cycle, joining Rivals 250 defensive ends Keon Keeley, Brennan Vernon. Mike, I'll let you touch on how that came together in a minute, but first, I want to make sure you guys are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Just hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button. We really appreciate it. I want to make sure if you guys are listening on podcasts, subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Leave us a rating, leave us a review. If you like us, leave us a nice rating and a nice review, and we'll love you forever. And you can follow us on Twitter. Follow me at Patrick Engel _. That's ENGEL. Follow Mike at Rivals _Singer. And of course, keep it locked on blueandgold.com for all of your Notre Dame fall camp coverage. As Mike mentioned, yes, we took last week off as Notre Dame really opened up fall camp and has taken up a lot of my time, certainly. But recruiting never stops, so here we are. Mike, Adon Schuler, how did it come together?
You know, it came together pretty stinking fast, to be honest with you. Notre Dame offered him in May, and like I said, he built a pretty good relationship with the staff, and then he took a visit to Notre Dame at the end of July. Also took visits to Boston College, Maryland, and Penn State. Might have sneaked in a visit to Rutgers, the local school. And sorry, just reading these comments as we go along. They're pretty funny. And when he visited Notre Dame July 27th for that cookout, aka the Grill and Chill, he also participated in a little camp, and that is when I think he really went from a recruit to keep an eye on to a top target, like someone that Notre Dame was like, all right, we need to get this guy in our 2023 class. Media was not allowed at that event, unfortunately, that little workout, but I was told that he was a rock star, is what one source told me, that he just really performed well. This is a player who, is just 15 years old. Like, he is a young guy going into his junior year of high school. And I've said this before, like, when I was a sophomore in high school, I turned 16 on, like, the third day of school. He isn't turning 16 until I think a month or two into his junior year of high school. So he, you see him like he basically is like a 2024 recruit. He's running like, I want to say it was a 4.68 he ran at Notre Dame in the 40-yard dash. That is a fantastic time as a 15-year-old. The sky is the limit for this young man. A big time player. Thought he had a fair Rivals ranking, number 213 overall player in the country. Think that's good for him going into his junior season. It's a pretty good pickup for Notre Dame, especially early on in the process. Go get a bona fide 4-star player. And again, someone who Notre Dame really coveted after they saw him in person.
Yeah, and another New Jersey addition for Notre Dame here. It's now a couple of them in the 2022 class. Jaden Bellamy, Steve Angeli, and now here in 2023, Adon Schuler. Yeah, and another good start to the defensive back class here for Notre Dame. Now coming off of three right now, four-star commitments in 2022, adding yet another here in 2023. We're going to keep going here through some more Notre Dame recent commits here, going into the 2022 class. We'll take your questions a little bit later on for you guys in our YouTube live chat and watching us live right now. But if you want to have us answer it right away, of course, you can drop us a super chat and we'll jump right on it.
That's what you get to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
don't I mean it's worth just dropping a couple bucks just to hear that alone. So we appreciate everyone joining us live here.
So 2022, let's go into the receivers there. Of course, Notre Dame landing longtime wide receiver targets Tobias Merriweather and C.J. Williams, both top 170 players now in the updated rankings, I think. Williams still a top 50 player. You had FutureCast in for these guys for a little while. I know we've talked a lot about them. So now that they're in the class with Amori and Walker, I mean, where do you see this as, what this receiver class means for Notre Dame and where it stacks up? And now as Notre Dame stacks a really good 2021 receiver class with a really good 2022 class.
Here's the thing: like I couldn't tell you how this compares to Alabama or Clemson or Ohio State right now. You know, like let's wait a little bit before we make that judgment. But I can tell you how Notre Dame feels about this class in terms of when they went into, I want to say when things really shifted to like, all right, it's not early in the 2022 class now. It's like it's really full on, like start to build this class maybe, I don't know, spring, March, April, that kind of time frame. Notre Dame really identified, especially going into June when official visits happen, Notre Dame identified four guys as top of the board receivers: Tobias Merriweather, C.J. Williams, Amorion Walker, who they had committed, and Nicholas Anderson. Those were kind of like the big four for Notre Dame. There's of course other targets out there like Xavion Bradshaw and Andre Green at the time. He eliminated Notre Dame, did not have the Irish in his top six. The other names to know, a Joseph Griffin Jr., the Boston College commit. But again, it was really those four that the Notre Dame staff really zeroed in on as guys that they really liked and felt that they had a realistic chance with. Someone like Evan Stewart from Texas, they would of course love to have in this class, but that was not someone they identified as like we have a realistic shot with. And we'll pop on Tobias Merriweather's tape here for YouTube folk. They got three of them. Like that is pretty darn good. So again, when you talk about this receiver class, I mean, they batted 75% on those guys that they went into the summer really hoping to land. That's not too bad. Nicholas Anderson pulled a surprise commitment, took his talents to Oregon. But then they get CJ and Tobias, who I think you can look at those two and be like, those are the top of the board guys. Forget about, whether or not, they had a good chance with them, kind of how the receiver board stacked up. These are the top two guys, regardless, in Williams and Merriweather that the Notre Dame staff coveted. So that's pretty big time.
Yeah. So you mentioned, all right, how does it compare to Ohio State and Alabama and, et cetera, those teams? In this class, I mean, we'll see. But here's the trend I think you at least have to like if you think about closing the gap and shrinking the gap or whatever term you want to use. And this was before the rivals rankings update this week, but Tobias Merriweather moved 2 spots outside of this, so it still holds well. So with those 2 additions, Notre Dame has signed or landed commitments from 5 top 160 receivers since 2020, and that's including 2 players in the top 50. Alabama has, in that same span, 5, Ohio State 7, Clemson 3. So if you talk about how to narrow the gap, close the gap, whatever, that's a pretty good start. Now, of course, you go into Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson's and you probably find some 5-star guys, but nonetheless, that's at least a good place to be in trying to accomplish that mission. And for comparison's sake, Notre Dame signed 5 top 160 receivers from 2015 to 19, but none of them were in the top 50. So receiver recruiting is seemingly in a pretty good place right now.
Don't say that. You're not allowed to say that, man. Or is Dell not the is not the scapegoat anymore? Is Dell okay now? Yeah, I've said this before, and I kind of feel like this is kind of one of those unpopular opinion takes. Like Notre Dame just has had some bad luck with receivers. I honestly feel like this. When you look at 2019 and 2020, like Cam Hart, I mean that was a good take. I mean it didn't work out at receiver, but it was clearly a good take. Kendall Abdul Rahman, yeah, that one didn't work out. But I'm sure when he was in high school, guys like me would have been talking him. I didn't cover Notre Dame at the time, but like I'm sure at the time, like people thought that was a darn good get. Notre Dame staff probably did, just didn't work out. And they look at 2020, Jordan Johnson. Would you gonna be mad at them for taking a 5-star receiver? I mean, that one didn't work out. I mean, got homesick or whatever that situation was, academics, whatever. It didn't work out. Jay Brunell battled injuries. Kind of had some personal stuff going on with him that we're not going to get into, but just didn't work out with him. And then you got Xavier Watts. Jury's still out there. So I don't know. For me, it's kind of just like a little bit of a combination of bad luck. Was it perfect recruiting? Of course not. Like that's you can't not put any of the blame on the coaching staff. But for me, I feel like just kind of a little bit of bad luck is a factor there. And then you look at 2021 and 2022 receiver recruiting, and potentially even into 2023 with maybe a good start with Cornell Tate. He announced a little bit before we started recording here that he would be making a decision October 8th. Hey, it's not looking too bad.
Yeah, to I guess go back into a popular topic here for a minute with fans and Jordan Johnson. Obviously, that didn't work, but you look at the 4 top 160 and within that 2 top 50 receivers that Notre Dame has, and maybe chances are one of them doesn't work out or spends his career as a backup or ends up transferring. Just play the odds when you look at most of that, and yeah, there's a decent chance that happening. But when you look at who else they've surrounded it with, okay, you can survive that a little bit more. And that's just the same reason why, okay, let's say you look at the past 7 or 8 top 200 receivers or national recruits or receivers at Ohio State has signed. One of them probably hasn't worked out. You don't really notice it because they have that other hit rate. So Notre Dame in a lot better position to have a high profile guy like that not work out, but not have it cripple you in the sense that I think the Jordan Johnson departures seem to really sting fans coming off of what Notre Dame's receiving core had looked like in 2020.
Hey, they still got a potential for a 4th receiver in this class too. It's just and you look at the team side of things, like it's a deep group. It's you look at who's starting in the slot. Like Lawrence Keys is a talented football player. He might not even be starting. There's a ton of talent when you look at receiver recruiting and what's on the team, but what you don't have is anything proven. So I think there's a lot of optimism, but we'll just have to kind of see what actually happens on the field these next couple of years.
So one other aspect of the Williams and Merriweather commitments I think we should touch on is when Williams committed August 8th, he launched Notre Dame to the #1 spot in the Rivals recruiting rankings. And Mike, you and I both wrote that, okay, it's highly, highly likely that Notre Dame drops, if not all but a certainty that Notre Dame drops. I mean, Ohio State could add 1 3-star commit right now and jump to #1 if I'm not mistaken. But it's still a neat thing for the program to tout and a good sign of, okay, pushing upward in recruiting, like we've heard Brian Kelly talk about wanting to do, going back to that famous Camping World Bowl comment about pushing the top 5 class. And I don't know that this is a lock to be top 5 either, but this is at least the kind of stuff you want to see at this point in August of a cycle where, all right, you feel good about the chances of that happening. So to go into a little bit of the math here on, all right, why it's not likely to finish #1.
Did the crack staff put this together, or is this all you?
No, this is me. I gave the crack staff off because I wrote this in a story we did here. No, Crack staff is on call as always because they just are relentless. But no, this is me. Number one class. I mean, no team since 2003 has signed a number one class without landing at least 3 5 stars. That's not going to happen for Notre Dame, and I don't really think ever was in much discussion to happen. And even 3, like that's pretty rare. Usually, a team that finishes number one has at least 4. And yeah, again, Notre Dame just not going to reach that in all likelihood. And then you look at the top 10 or even go a little bit beyond top 10. You see a lot of teams in that range who are usually in the top 5, if not number one, because their classes are smaller right now, and eventually that's going to grow. Everybody ends up with 20-ish commits, but in any one moment in June, July, August, whatever, that's not necessarily going to be the case. You have Notre Dame here sitting with 21, Alabama sitting there with 14, and an average star rating that's very, very good. You kind of expect that to climb up there a little bit. So yeah, they're a little inside baseball here with math and rankings of, all right, why this is unlikely to stay first, but doesn't mean this is just a thing of whatever. You can shrug it off. A good sign of where Notre Dame's trying to take this thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you look at the average star rankings. I mean, it's kind of nice that Notre Dame actually has more commitments than Penn State, and they're still ranked higher, right? I mean, that's something good because right now, like you said, like Notre Dame has more commitments than a lot of those guys. That's why they have the number one class right now. But yeah, you look down the list, Florida State number 3 class, Notre Dame has higher, average star ranking per recruit. Notre Dame 3.76, Penn State 3.63, Florida State 3.65. Of course, Ohio State had the number one class for quite a while until they kind of went on a little bit of a lull of commitments, and then Quinn Ewers, the number one player in the 2022 class, reclassified to 2021. So the Buckeyes basically lost the commitment there for 2022, so that brought it down a little bit. Oregon, average star ranking 3.5. Alabama, 3.86, not that much higher than Notre Dame. LSU, 3.8, not much higher than Notre Dame. It's 0.04 higher. Georgia, 3.76. Texas A&M, 3.64. So that 3.76 by Notre Dame looks pretty good. You mentioned the 3 5-star thing. Like, if I'm putting on some blue and gold glasses, which I kind of feel like now we, actually need some blue and gold glasses, some logo glasses. But, like, if I'm putting on those Homer lenses, I feel like you can say Zach Rice, 5-star, possibly. Hey, Notre Dame's kind of in the top 2 or 3, right? Xavier Nwankpa, Notre Dame could very much land. I think they're in the top 2 for him. Jaylen Sneed's committed. He's 2 notches away from 5-star status, and he's the second highest ranked 4-star recruit in the country. Hey, 3 5-stars is not like the most outlandish thing in the world. I'm just saying, don't shoot the messenger.
I mean, that's Notre Dame's absolute best case scenario, and I think in recruiting you just learn to never expect that to happen.
No,
but yeah, okay, the roadmap is there. Yes, like you said, Xavier Nwankpa, new 5-star in the rivals rankings, so Notre Dame's able to get him. That helps a little bit. I mean, realistically, I think the goal should be top 5, and that's going to require a strong finish that's closer to the best case than the worst case by a lot, and to have a couple of things go your way with more rankings bumps and just avoid disaster. Basically.
Avoid disaster, decommitments, CJ Williams dropping like a fly, something like that. Like, yeah, exactly. You need to avoid that for sure.
It is possible. Like, let's say Notre Dame gets neither of Rice or Nwankpa, but it does have Jaylen Sneed bumped up to 5-star, which he's on the cusp on, as we'll touch on in a minute. You can get a top 5 class with 1 5-star. It's happened 7 times since 2013. Only once, though, in that span did it happen with 0.
This up. I'm so impressed.
This was on my story, August 9th, just breaking down how likely Notre Dame is to stay in this top spot or even this top 5. So you have to get a 5-star in all likelihood, but do it right beyond that, and you can get in the top 5 with just 1 5-star.
And
so we'll see.
Notre Dame had 5-star recruits in the past 2 classes and did not have a top 5 class. Kelly is, here's the thing. Like, a lot of people, I feel like a lot of Notre Dame fans, and I'm speaking for Rivals. I can't say about 24/7 or ESPN, but for Rivals, last year's class was the first top 10 finish since 2013, right, Patrick? So I feel like a lot of Notre Dame fans are kind of like, Notre Dame needs to break out of the 6 to the 10. Heck, they just need to break into the 10. They hadn't done it in 8 classes or whatever the math is. Like, so we're talking top 5. I mean, it would be, nice for Notre Dame just to start landing more top 10 classes. And yeah, the number 1 finish, just put that to bed. That's probably not happening.
No, no. But let's talk about rankings.
Ooh.
Rivals updating its 2022 and 2023 rankings this month. 2022 Rivals 250 out today, Tuesday, as we're recording this. Mike, I know you've chronicled all this. We've got stories up on blueandgold.com detailing those rises, those falls with Notre Dame commits and targets. What's your takeaway as you see these newest Rivals 250 rankings?
Yeah, so off to a great start in 2023. All 3 of Notre Dame's commitments ranked inside the Rivals 250. Brennan Vernon is the highest ranked 4-star in the country, number 8 overall in the land. He got, I think he dropped a spot in the strong side defensive end rankings because David Hicks moved all the way up, but then moved up a spot in the national rankings. Here's a comment for you. Rick Mahalik saying,
thank you, Rick. You read my story breaking down number 1.
There you go. I did read it. I'm pretty sure I proofed it. I just can't remember, dude. 8 days ago. Come on, I don't remember any of that.
Yeah, okay, that is like, multiple centuries in Mike Singer's web timeline. Granted, in fairness, you've probably written 50 stories and transcribed 30 interviews and talked to 20 recruits. So, yeah, give you a pass.
I appreciate all the credit you just gave. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I like it.
Yeah, just take it and run, man.
I'll take it. So yeah, off to a great start. I think Adon Schuler's ranking of number 213 in the country is solid. I thought he was actually. I thought they were going to give him a 5.7, so that 5.8 inside the 250 thought was nice. Keelan Keeley went from unranked to number 106 in the country. That's a nice jump. They could have given him a 3-star, 4-star, 106. Take that. And then I mentioned Brennan Vernon. And then you look at Notre Dame targets in the 2023 Rivals 250. Justice Haynes, top running back on the board, in my opinion. He's also Rivals number 1 running back in the country, number 17 player overall. Deuce Robinson from Phoenix Pinnacle, number 24 overall player in the country, number 1 tight end. Justin Rhett is the top Notre Dame DB target, bumped up from a low 4 to a mid 4-star, number 47 overall player in the country, number 6 corner. So I think 2023, not bad for Notre Dame at all. Moving to 2022, Tai Chang gets a bump 75 spots. He was really good at the Future 50 at IMG Academy in June that I saw him at. Stood up Jaheim Otis, an Alabama commit, 2 reps in a row. That he looked really good there. So 75 spots up to 114 overall. Jaylen Sneed, mentioned this a little bit ago, number 114. Excuse me, I'm reading 2 things at once. Jaylen Sneed, second highest ranked 4-star recruit, moved up 14 spots, number 31 overall. And then there were the drops. This is what we got to talk about. And this is kind of where when we were planning for this show, I was like, man, really shouldn't get into this. I'm going to do this against my better judgment. I hope my boss is not watching this because, I might just go crazy here. CJ Williams, Tyson Ford, Joshua Burnham, Nwafe Tuihalamaka, Tobias Merriweather, Joey Tanona, Jadarian Price, all dropped from a range of 1 to 17 spots. Tanona was 1 spot. I think Williams, Burnham, Tuihalamaka all dropped 17 spots. And we just got a comment from Irish Natty saying they hate us because they ain't us. Now, I don't know what this is in reference to. Maybe it's with the Rivals rankings. I don't know. Maybe it's like, hey, the Rivals rankings are hating on us. And that's kind of my point here. And I want to bring up some context, okay? You Notre Dame fans listening or watching this, you are passionate. I love you. Like, you are, like, without you, we don't get to do this. So, like, you're passionate. You see on, my article that I wrote today at blueandgold.com that, those, 7, 8 guys all got dropped. And you're like, what the heck? My job is to bring you some context. What that means. Is Rivals out to get Notre Dame recruits? And when I say Rivals, it could be 24/7, ESPN, any of these sites. Like, are they out to get Notre Dame? My first thought here is, if Rivals does not feel a kid is properly rated, sorry, that was a tongue twister, Shouldn't they drop them down? Would you rather them move them up or keep them the same? Like if they don't think a kid is as good as he ranked, they should drop them. If you don't agree with that, that doesn't matter. Like that's their job. Like this is what they do. They do the rankings. They have to, like, if people move up, someone has to drop. That's just kind of how it goes. Even if even if Rivals was not like, or excuse me, if they were like, you know what, we feel the same exact thing about Nwafe Tui Halamaka, but we've got all these other guys moving up, like, sorry, like you have to drop a little bit. That's just kind of how it goes. And then there's the point of, I mean, how do we have all these guys in the Rivals 250, only 2 moved up and the rest moved down? So this is where I want to take a look at a few things, okay? So let's just pull up the 2022 Rivals 250 and let's look at some other schools. Notre Dame recruits against, they're in the top 5. Like, let's look at some other schools. So let's look at, when I pulled this up, I was like, all right, Florida State, this is the first school I saw. I think they're the number 3 class in the, or 3 or 4, yeah, number 3 actually. Number 3 class in the country. They got the number 1 player in the country. So Travis Hunter, absolute bona fide stud. Let's look at the rest. They have 7 players in the Rivals 250. Let's see, did their players all move up? Did their players all move down? Let's take a look. So Travis Hunter, obviously, staying the same. Sam McCall, safety from Lakeland, Florida, dropped 21 spots. AJ Duffy, their quarterback commit, dropped 10 spots. Antavius Woody, defensive line commit for the Florida State Seminoles, dropped 7 spots. Travion Williams dropped 14 spots, defensive end. Jalen Early dropped 3 spots. Alu Ba dropped 9 spots. So they had 7 guys in there. 6 of the 7 dropped. You guys, like, what about Alabama, Mike? What about the Bama bump? All right, let's do it. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. See what we got here. Sean Murphy moved up 2 spots. That Bama bump, 2 spots. Jeremiah Alexander moved up 31 spots. Okay, and Notre Dame, I mean, look, just right below, Notre Dame had a guy move up 14 spots. Tai Chang move up 75 spots. And I'm not trying to be here and defend Rivals. I'm just like, this is just straight facts. Ty Simpson. You mean the guy that Notre Dame offered late and everyone's up in arms? 16 spots he dropped. I mean, he's a baller. I'm not trying to dismiss him or anything. Emmanuel Henderson, 9 spots. Big Bama bump. Jaheim Otis, down 4 spots. Tyler Booker, he's big time, down 14 spots. This is a darn good player. He dropped down 55 spots. Robert, you dropped down 55 spots, Patrick. That is an Alabama commit. You can't drop down 55 spots as an Alabama commit. Alabama commit from the outside the 250 comes into 155, and then another. So, like, I was planning to look at, like, a couple others, but I feel like we're good here. But kind of see what I'm saying, Patrick? Am I crazy? Like, give me a rebuttal. Like, I just don't think that it's like, I got a tweet comment when I posted my story about the rankings. Someone said, Rivals hates Notre Dame. I'm like, this is where the context comes in of like, okay, what was it? 6 of the 8 Notre Dame commits dropped. Well, let's look at some other schools. Like, a bunch of their guys dropped too. Like, I don't know. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. Tell me what you think, Patrick.
My rebuttal is it's written in the internet 10 commandments that Rivals hates Notre Dame. I don't know. How can you go against that?
Oh, well then, why didn't you just lead with that? I wouldn't have wasted 5 minutes or however long that took if you just said that.
No, I agree with everything you said. I mean,
that's no fun. You can't agree with everything.
The whole Rivals hates your team isn't holding up because, again, everyone goes through that. Everyone has drops. Everyone has guys move up. You saw it. And look, I know maybe one guy dropping 20 spots is going to get all the attention from 5 others moving up 3 spots or something. But at least as it pertains to Notre Dame this year, the ranking update came out and gave Notre Dame, 40 bonus points? Or 40 more points on its score?
I can tell you in a second. I screenshotted it. Okay, so Notre Dame did have 2386, and now it has 2405. So what's that, 19 spots?
Yeah,
it
19 points.
After all this. So it actually moved up in the rankings.
So there, proof's in the pudding. Rivals doesn't hate. Notre Dame go out in every single ranking that drops its guys, and
Yeah.
every ranking update hurts Notre Dame. There you go.
So
Look, I
what?
mean, look, you guys can have your fun, but
Yeah.
there's your math and your end result of a ranking update helping Notre Dame. Just gonna throw it out there.
Yeah, and another thing is and I've said this many times, if Jaylen Sneed gets bumped to a 4 to a 5-star, which I think is possible, very possible, that will be 3 straight recruiting cycles Notre Dame's had a 4 to a commit bumped from 4 to 5. I mean, so I don't think being a Notre Dame commit hurts at all. Or helps. I don't know. That's kind of my ramble. And again, I'm not trying to be like, roasting fans or anything like that. But I just feel passionate about this because like I just have seen it so much in my career, covering many different schools. I'm just like, we got to set the record straight a little bit on this, and I don't want to say take rankings less seriously, but not like live and die on every bump or not. I don't know, but we got bigger things to talk about, I'm sure. So
Yeah, we've got a spam bot here in the chat, which I think means people are getting tired of hearing us talking about rankings, and
guess,
they want us to take our questions. So should we take questions,
well,
Mike? You
yeah.
ready?
All right, let's
All
take some
right,
questions.
questions.
So
Don't
let
forget to leave us a super chat if you want us to answer your question right away. Drop them in the comments if you want to answer. We'll get to them at some point. But yes, super chat guarantees we will get to them right away. We're easily bought. With that said, what do you got queued up for us first?
Yeah, definitely hit that thumbs up while you guys are watching. This was a pretty popular one.
Yeah, a good topical question here. DMaster81 asks, how are you feeling right now about Cornell Tate? He is, of course, the top 100 receiver from Chicago, but who plays at IMG, who earlier today, Tuesday, announced he has set an October 8th commitment date. So now, Mike, now that this thing has an ending timeline.
Sorry, quick technical difficulty. All right, did I lose you? Are you still there, Patrick? Oh, there you are. Okay, all right, Cornell Tate. Sorry about that. Yeah, set it a commitment date of October 8th, like Patrick mentioned. You see, for folks watching on YouTube, he's got a 88% future cast for Ohio State. You've got a bunch for the Buckeyes, and then just one for Notre Dame right now, and that's me. Put that in May. I don't know. I mean, I'll give more details in tonight's Lucky Charms at blueandgold.com. Kind of what I've heard, not only today, but just in the past couple months in his recruitment. I still think it's a close battle between Notre Dame and Ohio State. That's kind of the gist right now. When you set a commitment date for 2 months away, I don't think that there's like I don't know if he's made a decision. Like if he would have been like, all right, I'm committing August 20th, it's like, all right, that's in 3 days. Like, you know where you're going. But October 8th, what's that, 7 weeks? I still think there's a battle to be had in this recruitment. That's kind of my read here, Patrick.
Yeah, one of Notre Dame's top targets in the 23 class overall would be another top 160 receiver to add. Kieran Siri, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Sorry if I didn't. Asks, next 22 commit for Notre Dame. Who you got, Mike?
See, I don't love answering these questions because then I feel like I build up a unrealistic expectation. So I look at someone who is deciding soonest. First of all, I mean, could it be Billy Schrauth? Like, I feel like his timeline is kind of like any day now. Like, is it Wisconsin? Is it Notre Dame? Ohio State, I believe is still recruiting him. So that would be a possibility. Oh, man. They just went on such a commit run. I feel like a lot of these other guys, Hero Kanu, Anthony Lucas, Xavion Brown, are kind of like, well, we're deciding later in the year. So then I might say, and there's not a lot of spots left in the class either. Quinshaw Judkins slash some other second running back. Maybe they go after someone new. Judkins is expected to officially visit for the Toledo game. Major Everhart, maybe they bring him in for an official visit soon, and he pops. So that's kind of where I would say maybe one of those three names for now. I mean, yeah, that could change pretty quickly.
Up next, Jeremy Snell 24 asks, who do you like for Sonny Styles? Newly minted 5-star Sonny
Yeah,
Styles in the
yeah,
23
good
class.
for him. Good for him. That's a big time player. I've got. Wait, no, do I have a future cast pick in? I don't think so.
You do.
I like Notre Dame right now for him. I thought for a while, and I think someone said this on your YouTube comments, I thought for a while he was going to just be like, forget Notre Dame, forget Ohio State. I want to do my own thing and end up at like an Alabama or North Carolina or whatever school, LSU. But everything I hear is very positive for Notre Dame and Ohio State. I think it's going to be one of those two schools. Right now, I give the edge to Notre Dame. I'm reading two things and talking at once. It never ends well for me. But yeah, right now I give the edge to Notre Dame. I think the Fighting Irish staff's doing an incredible job recruiting them. You look at Marcus Freeman as the lead recruiter there. He played for Ohio State and now is the coach of Notre Dame and can say, like, look, 4 for 40 is really important. I went to Ohio State and had a cup of coffee in the league before, I had an injury that, ended my career. He's doing well for himself with an Ohio State degree, but I don't know. There's that kind of pitch there, with what Notre Dame could do for you 40-40 wise. 44-40 wise. I can never say that one without tripping up. So, yeah, long way to answer that question. I like Notre Dame right now for Sonny Styles.
Casey Martinez asks, any news about Xavion Nwakpa or Zach Rice? We touched on a little bit earlier, but anything more you want to add here?
Yeah, so news is when you put it like that, there's not really going to be a whole lot new with those guys for a while. Like Nwakpa told Rivals.com, and I have a story up on this at blueandgold.com that he basically said, I'm waiting until All-American Bowl or after my senior season. So the only real news to come out with Xavier would be like a game day visit, like if he sets up a Notre Dame trip for like at the USC game or something like that. That would be news, but otherwise nothing right now. And Zach Rice, checked in with some sources there this week. Really nothing new. He's just taking his time. I still like North Carolina there. If Notre Dame is to have a real shot in that one, they're just going to need to get him back for another visit. Like he can't have gone to North Carolina, I think 3 or 4 times, and Notre Dame once. That's a really tough battle to win there. So, yeah, nothing newsy on Zach Rice right now, but that's kind of the thought process there. Scrolling through to see what kind of questions we got here. Got Tim Tebow talk. I'm just going to keep scrolling past that and just... All right.
I didn't realize minor league baseball players were a popular topic in our YouTube comments.
No, he got cut by the Jags today, I think.
Yeah. He was also a minor league baseball player, and that went better than his tight end venture. Which
wow,
granted isn't
that's
saying
not
much.
saying anything great because he stunk as a baseball player, didn't he?
No, his baseball career went better than...
Yeah, I know, and he stunk at baseball too. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, one of the GOATs though in college football. Like he was incredible though. So
yeah. Irish Natty asks, where does the staff stand with Anthony Lucas at this point?
Another one of those guys that's playing the long game. Nothing super imminent with him. He did drop, I think it was a top 6 or 7. Notre Dame was included there. He's just a tough kid to read. I think Texas A&M, Miami, Alabama, Notre Dame. I think those are definitely schools to keep an eye on. I'm probably forgetting one that I see as like legitimate threats to land him. But yeah, Lucas has been for a while this guy on Notre Dame's board that's like, we are going to recruit the heck out of him forever. I don't know, until he signs. Like they're just gonna keep recruiting him. Even if he commits tomorrow somewhere, I still think they'll continue to go after him. He's another one of those guys that I feel like, is one visit enough? For a prospect, they took that June official visit. Let's say they're waiting until December. If they start taking some trips elsewhere during the fall, is one enough? One thing that'll be nice is that at the end of this calendar year, in-home visits will resume. I think that'll be awesome after we didn't have those last year. That'll be good to get back face-to-face contact, get Marcus Freeman. Man, I've always said Brian Kelly is fantastic in-home visits. Can you imagine, BK and Marcus Freeman in-home visits? I mean, come on, that's next level. So, yeah, Notre Dame continuing to push for Anthony Lucas, but nothing really new on that front.
Gary Salinas asks, does the addition of Williams and Merriweather make Arch Manning take a real look at ND?
Okay, so I got good news and bad news here. Which one do you want first, Patrick?
Give the people the good news.
The good news is, while I'm not sure if Arch Manning is taking a real look at Notre Dame, I'm continuing to hear that one is not dead. Notre Dame is still recruiting Arch Manning, and they're still working their tail off to get him on campus. The bad news, which is not really bad news, I don't think this has any impact. I mean, if Arch Manning, he just does not seem like the kind of kid who's well, they got those two kids, now I'm going to look at Notre Dame. I don't think that's so. Yeah, probably answer is no, but I wanted to also add that there's maybe some sliver of hope.
Yeah, and it seems like it would have the opposite effect, honestly. Arch Manning commits somewhere, and then you get the receivers going there, not necessarily the other way around. I don't think he'll have any problem finding himself with good college receivers.
Yeah,
but
no, and he's and it's more for the 2023 class, right? So it probably a better question about what about Cornell Tate? Would Cornell Tate, it's still, the answer probably would have still been the same in terms of, probably not. But I've seen that he, has built relationships with other recruits in the 2023 class, potentially teaming up. But, I'm not sure. I mean, Notre Dame doesn't have any receivers committed yet. But again, if Cornell Tate were to pick Notre Dame, then, maybe his first call is to Arch Manning.
Brandon Plensner asks, Mike, do you feel the number of offensive line takes in 2022 is now 4? Is it time for Notre Dame to expand the board this fall?
I mean, it's been 4 for a while. It could be 5 if, Billy Strouth and Zach Rice both call and say, hey, I want in. And, of course, the Irish have Joey Tenona, Tai Chang, and Ashton Craig committed. I think it's 4. I think that's what Notre Dame would like to get to, but Notre Dame's never going to take a guy just to take a guy, that's for sure. And you look back at the 2020 recruiting class, Notre Dame's plan, I think, was to take – I was just starting to cover Notre Dame at that point, but I know they were looking to take at least 3. I think it was potentially even 4, and they ended up with 2. That is a prime example of, they're not just going to go after a guy for the sake of going after a guy. So – that's kind of the feeling there. My guess right now is 4. They've got the 3. They're likely going to take one more, whether it's – and then it kind of leads into your second question, Brandon. Good to see you, by the way, buddy. Is it time for Notre Dame to expand the board this fall? I think if they're not feeling great with Strouth hopefully has made a decision by, September, October. Maybe some more so October. But if they don't feel good about Zach Rice, Emil Wagner is another one of those recruits playing the long game. I do think they'll expand the board. They're going to be evaluating prospects regardless. They'll definitely be, looking at other recruits, like I said, and I do think they'll end up expanding the board.
Richard Schmitz asks, what's the logical limit to how many commits Notre Dame will take?
Logical limit. I don't know what the logical limit is. I can just kind of tell you my feeling. If that is logical, I hope it is. Considering I do this for a living. I mean, they have 21 commits right now, Patrick? I should probably know that considering I do this for a living. I think a lot of this depends on what happens with the roster this fall. I don't know, man. Like when someone transfers, like I feel like the Notre Dame staff is for the most part, like they're gonna have known about that for a while already. Like they're kind of have an inkling that it would be happening. So I think, when you get more into the fall, you'll get a clearer picture. My kind of educated guess, I would say in the 24 to 26 range. They're at 21 right now. I think four more additions. And then you look at the commits, right? You could see potentially another running back, potentially another receiver, potentially 1 to 2 offensive linemen, 1 or 2 more defensive linemen. Heck, if Anthony Lucas and Hero Kanu both call them up, like, do they take them? What about safety with Xavion Brown? So I think 25 is kind of like the favorite number that I'm rolling with right now.
Rick Mahalik asks, where would you rank Cornell Tate with the 3 other receiver commits in 2022? Tate, of course, being 23.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those guys in person. Actually, CJ Williams I did see in March of 2020. Man, that's a good question. Have you been able to see Tate?
No.
No. I don't know. I feel like if you put any of those guys fourth, I get in trouble somehow. I'll probably put him third. And I don't have to rank him, so I'm just gonna say third right now. But we haven't seen game footage of him since his freshman year of high school in 2019. He transferred to IMG after. So he was at Chicago Marist for the fall of 2020. They didn't have a season. Then transfers to IMG Academy. Then Marist does have a season in the spring. So we haven't seen him play since 2019. So that's I think third of the fourth right now. But yeah, that could easily change there. So let's see these questions. Scrolling through. Just waiting for a super chat to come in. We'll definitely
Not
take
too
that
late, people.
away. Irish Natty, we appreciate this. Saying that you're enjoying watching our show, covered a broad area of recruiting questions. Let's just throw up another question from Brandon here.
And that is, do you think Oklahoma takes a stab at Tobias Merriweather after their second stud receiver commitment in Luther Burden? Well, what do you think? I know this is a little bit crazy hypothetical, but interesting nonetheless.
Well, Oklahoma is the school that he had talked about a lot, really wanting an offer from. But so, Brandon, I don't know if you had seen that article and remember that from like 6 months ago. It's impressive. But yeah, right now, I don't know. I didn't know they had 2 receiver decommitments. Who was the other one? I can't remember. But
crack staff will have to look that up.
not needed. But go ahead. I mean, if the crack staff is on here, of course it's not me or Patrick. But I can say that Merriweather does not strike me as the kind of kid who would flip flop or look at other schools or take visits when he's committed. He is pretty much a straight shooter. Like my first time even getting on the phone with him was like a day after he committed. Like I had done a DM interview with him, and we interviewed his dad once. Like he's just not a big like limelight kid. Like I don't see him being like, I'm getting an Oklahoma offer and now I want to decommit from Notre Dame. Like I don't know. I just don't see that yet.
Crackstaff did actually make the discovery really quickly because why wouldn't they? They worked tirelessly. Talon Chatron, Notre Dame offer one time.
Oh yeah, he decommitted.
Yeah, he did.
Then he flipped to Oklahoma State.
He did, and there's actually a third. And because we never go without an SMU mention on this podcast, Jordan Hudson decommitting from Oklahoma and picking SMU.
Will
4-star
Shipley.
receiver. Yes.
We also don't go
just complete it
without a podcast, and I'll talk about Will Shipley. So kind of throw him out there. All right, Brandon also asked, is Xavion Bradshaw locked in a fall visit yet? You know what? Let's just text them. Let's just text them right now. Xavion.
You don't get this anywhere else, people.
What's up, bro?
Hands-on reporting. Have
you set up any fall visits yet? He still hasn't visited Notre Dame. He did take an unofficial to Virginia at the end of July. At least he had told me that he was planning on it. I don't know if he ended up taking that. And then he's planning. He told me about a month ago he's planning to visit Notre Dame. So still nothing new there. Uh oh. Uh
Ooh.
oh. Uh oh. It's super chat time.
All
David,
right.
appreciate you, my man.
David, thank you. Always, always a
Hey,
pleasure.
David, appreciate. Hey, David's my guy. Always showing some love to Mike or Money Mike and Tricky. You're Tricky. That's your nickname, Patrick. Just so you know, from David.
Anything that's not Rick, it's cool. I like it. All right. Well, David, speaking for some other folks in the chat here, what's the process with Bradshaw? A really topical question here, too.
Yeah. We're just
This
talking
guy
about
is
him.
Mr. Electric. Why is this moving at a snail's pace?
It's a very good question. Um, I mean, look, Notre Dame was going to bring him up for an official visit for the 25th of June, and he it was on him that it was canceled. Like he had a family thing going on. I think they're on vacation somewhere, and they just couldn't make the logistics of the trip worked out. And I don't know. Like I know he was playing a lot of basketball in June, taking official visits. Like I don't think that it's like a Notre Dame side of things, David. That Notre Dame is, or that this recruitment between the two parties is moving at snail's pace. Bradshaw is just kind of content to have this process go the way he wants it to, and more power to him. So um, that's kind of the read there. Bradshaw's recruitment has just been so fascinating to me. For you got a lot of fans who are I'm a rankings guy. Like I'm just gonna stick to the rankings. I trust the process. Well, yeah, totally fair. I'm an offers guy. If you've got 50 offers, you're better than the guy with 8 offers. Fair. For me, I kind of like to take it all in, and then it's still at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't know. It's recruiting. You just don't know. But Bradshaw, it's like he's not highly ranked. He doesn't have a ton of offers. He doesn't play great competition, but he's got a cult following. It feels like Notre Dame fans just absolutely love Xavion Bradshaw. His tape is a lot of fun. That's probably the biggest thing, but it's extremely interesting to me. But let's just scroll through. So appreciate that, David. Scrolling through. This is not great podcast content when you're just saying I'm scrolling through.
Stalling time, buying time. We're
Well,
scrolling on a
I,
computer
I
screen.
I have a question for you, Patrick, and this is a question for our YouTube and podcast audience as well, because I've never actually talked to anyone about this before. It's 8:30 p.m. and I'm looking out the window and it's still bright out. Do people like the summer where it's bright out until 8:30, 9 o'clock? Or do people like when it gets dark out at 5:30 in the fall and in winter? Like, that's always been a question. I've always kind of wondered that, but I don't think I've ever asked anyone. Patrick, what about you? Do you like the early night, or do you like the night coming around at like 9 o'clock?
Is it weird to say I like both extremes? Like it's South Bend here. It doesn't get dark until 9:30 in the summer. So that's kind of awesome.
It's crazy.
And then I don't know. It's kind of cool, I guess. Hey, it's 4:30. It's dark. I don't know. But I think both extremes are kind of neat. I'll leave it at that. I don't have one that I. Okay, I'll take the summer one because it's summer here. But yeah,
May so
I
so
don't know both.
2007 Domer says, why would you want it to get dark early? Maybe
I feel like
for
that's a fair
like
question.
morning birds, maybe, because right, I'm not a morning bird, so I don't know, but I guess it gets brighter a lot, or that could only make sense, right? It gets brighter a lot earlier in the day if it's darker earlier. So that's how it can make sense. So all right, let's see at some of these questions or some of these responses. Brandon says, hey, when it gets dark early, winter is too long with season. Getting dark at 5 yeah, it just feels weird when it just flips like that. When it's dark, or when it's light out at like 8 o'clock, or whatever it is, and then the next day it's dark at 5. It's just like, whoa. And it's like, all right, it's time to go to bed at like 7 o'clock. um yeah, so everyone's kind of in my line of thinking here, but I love the winters here in Atlanta. It is fantastic. I will choose an Atlanta winter over anything. um Man,
Winter.
especially when the green your grass and your leaves, all the green stuff starts dying out there. Oh man, it's fantastic. I don't got to mow my lawn for like 4 months, and everyone knows that Mike's lawn business is. I don't actually have a lawn business, but I take my lawn very seriously. So I don't got to mow it for 4 months. It's pretty nice. So all right, we'll take a few more questions. Where were we at? About 55 minutes in. We don't like to go much longer than an hour, so or really reach an hour. So let's take a few questions. Anthony just popped on, so we'll take some of his questions.
What's Notre Dame's best chance for Xavier and Wampa? I know we just kind of touched on that, but yeah. How you feeling?
I hope is that a Mwanza? Was the
No, it was a later correction in there. So
okay. I was gonna say, is that autocorrect? So it
always kills you.
I think the question is like, who is Notre Dame's best chance for a 5-star, or what is Notre Dame's? I'm not. I'll answer both. I think Notre Dame's best chance at a 5-star recruit this cycle is the guy who's already committed, and that's Jaylen Sneed. He's just so darn close, and he just was so good at the rivals camps and just continues to climb. And for me, I haven't spoke to the rivals analysts about this, but for me, the thing that's holding me back from feeling that Jaylen Sneed is like a definite 5-star guy is I want to see his senior tape. I think he played 2 or 3 games. That's all they had at Hilton Head last season. I want to see him play more football, and he was playing defensive end. Does he still play defensive end this year? I don't love him there. I mean, that's best for them in this high school team. But I want to see him playing inside linebacker or playing some nickel because, but that also, I could go look at the opposite end of that. He's that good rushing the passer, and he's that good in coverage that we saw at those rivals camps, and that's an impressive player. So I'm kind of, now I'm disagreeing with myself, but there you go.
All right. I think we've got one more. Oh, okay, here we go. What's the feeling on Jaylen Brown, Mike? 2023.
Yeah. I think Notre Dame's got a better shot. And Brandon, I mentioned this in Lucky Charms, I want to say a week or two ago. Notre Dame's got a better shot here than people think. They're on him very early. It's a standout from Miami Gulliver Prep. I want to say was him and Cedric Irvin. I want to say it was those two guys Notre Dame offered during Clemson week. And that was like the biggest shock to me. It's like Notre Dame is focusing on this 2021 class, and they got Clemson coming up. And they go and offer 2 2023 kids from Miami. I was like, what? I was like, the last thing I would have ever expected. But hey, it happened. Notre Dame got on them early. Both of those kids visited Notre Dame in June, by the way. I think his dad really likes Notre Dame. I think Jaylen really likes Notre Dame. I mean, I would never project this early on. Any Miami kid to end up at Notre Dame, it's just such a far trek, and those kids just don't seem to be. I mean, when's the last time Notre Dame pulled a kid out of Miami-Dade? I don't know. I know they've Fort Lauderdale is that Drew White? I want to say.
Right.
It's just
Broward County, been kinder.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's just such a tough get. So feeling on Jaylen Brown is Notre Dame's at a better spot than people think. But, I mean, yeah, that's going to be a tough get.
All right, I think that's going to do it, yeah? Looks like
I appreciate all the questions, guys. Hit that thumbs up.
We appreciate you guys for listening and watching live on YouTube, or whether you're listening to us back on podcast, back on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a rating. Leave us a review. Hit that thumbs up button if you do any of those things. Leave us a nice rating or a nice review. We will love you forever. Follow us on Twitter. Follow me at @PatrickEngel_. Follow Mike at Rivals_Singer. We will talk to you again soon. Until then, take care.